Okay, let's see the import and export. Let's start off with export by opening this menu by pressing F3. And here we have several export options. We can export all libraries, the single library, single element, or single category. Now let's try and export the whole library. And we do this by pressing the export button. And as you can see, the result will be copied to the clipboard, and we can actually paste it to the notepad, for example, in order to save it or send it to the friends. It is also possible to select single library, in which case we will have to select the option which library will be saved. Let's try and save prefabs. Okay, it's exported to the clipboard, and if we paste it to the document, you will see it here. Now we're also able to export single category, in which case let's try and export the collection. Now in the third list we will have the name of the collection. We have to select it, and now we can export it. Let's try and paste it here. Now the final thing is that we are able to actually export single element. And let's try and export the compositions. Now in this single element and single category options, we are able to select several items by holding Control. So we can actually copy several compositions in one press of the button. Let's try and do this. And let's paste it. Okay. Well, in addition to the clipboard method, you're also able to export anything to the display. Now, in multiplayer environment, it is impossible to actually copy to the clipboard. In single player, it's actually possible, but not in the multiplayer. So just to cover this problem, there is the special option. You can export to the display. As you can see, there is a display here. And let's try to do that. Let's try and export this composition. And as you can see, there will be text, and you can actually select all this text and manually copy paste it to the document. Now in certain options there are additional box that we can click, and if we click it, the compositions from temporary category will be also added to the export. And now let's take a look at the import. Import menu is opened by pressing F4. And you can see here there are three ways of actually importing stuff. First one is from the clipboard, which is the best solution. And also it is possible to import from the display or from the file. If you import from the display, you have to paste the import data to this line. And also it is possible to import from the file, in which case you have to show the path to the root folder of your mission. But we will do it with the clipboard as it is the best way. Now let's see those exported data that we have from the previous lesson. And it is actually possible to import simultaneously several of those pieces of data. But in order to do that, between each of those pieces, let's place a comma like this, but do not place anything after the last piece of data and before the first one. So just between those elements. Now let's hit the Control A to select everything and copy by pressing Control C. Now in the game, let's press the load button. And as you can see, we have 4 pieces of data here. You can switch between them in order to see the information of the author, data, type, and the description. The name collision options. Now, what are those options are? As you know, the prefabs, collections, and compositions have their names. And those names are just the same as the class name for the object. And it is impossible to have 2 class names identical in your library. Now, the same applies to the compositions, collections, and prefabs. And in order to avoid having 2 compositions with the same name, there are those options. Now let's step through those options and see what they do. Now the first option is override, and what it means that if this import have certain item that have the same name as the item in your library currently have, your item in the library will be overwritten with the data from the import. The next option is add, and if again there is a naming collision and item in the import already exists in the library, then the import item will be renamed and added to the library with slightly changed name. It will have postfix at the end. And the final option is skip, and this is by default the best solution. And what it will do, it will just skip those items from the import that already in the library. Now you are able to select certain collision name option for each piece of import, and it will be still there saved. The one thing we have to mention is the destination category. If you're importing the compositions, you are able to set the destination category. It could be anything like this. We just write the name here. Okay, by default we want that everything is skipped, because if we already have something with a certain name in our library, probably we don't want to have it again, because it might be just the same stuff. And we pretty much hit the import button. That's all.